All right, so today we are in What is the Good News, Part 10. Okay, we're still in the book of Romans. We got a little bit more to do there, and then we'll go into 1 Corinthians. So let's go to Romans chapter 15. Okay, Romans 15. And in this chapter, believe it or not, he mentions the good news actually a couple of times. And so in verse 16, he says, he's talking about being a servant of Yeshua Messiah to the Gentiles with the priestly duty of bringing the good news of Elohim, so that the offering of the Gentiles becomes acceptable, set apart by the set-apart Spirit. Then again in verse 19, he talks about, I have completed the preaching of the good news at the end of that verse. Okay, we're going to see what this all means in a minute. And then in verse 20, he says, so I was ambitious to bring the good news where Messiah had not been named, lest I should build another man's foundation. Okay, so we're going to kind of explain what all this is about. So he has three places, talks about the good news. Now, hopefully we are really getting the incredible breadth, I know it's a weird word, breadth, okay? And how much the good news really includes, and how much it feeds right out of things that were in the Tanakh already, in the Old Testament, were prophesied to happen, that are now being built upon here in the Brit by people like the Apostle Shaul, Paul, okay? Now, let's begin in verse 1. We're going to be in verse 1 of chapter 15. So we get the context. Now, what has been the context, again, of Romans? By the way, this will be the same context in 1 Corinthians. The context of most of what Paul's dealing with, and the rest of the apostles, is the reality that there was not a lot of love in the body. And the reason it wasn't is because there was a great amount of division based on Jew versus Gentile, okay? Those who were born into covenant and those that were not. By the way, that wasn't the only strife. A lot of people that were not born into covenant, they got excited about it and started keeping it. We're keeping it a whole lot more accurately than a lot of the Jews who might as well have been Gentiles who had just really given up on keeping covenant. This is where Paul uses phrases like, your circumcision notwithstanding would be considered uncircumcision if you act like a Gentile. And so let's understand there's a lot of that going on, all right? Once a million years ago, okay, in college, I had a really good friend who was an Orthodox Jew. And while I was friends with her, okay, I became a Torah observant believer in Messiah. And very quickly I came to realize my Torah observance was a lot more serious than hers was, even though she was Orthodox, because she was just going through some of the Orthodox motions, a lot of the Talmudic things on top of Torah, but she did not have a heart for it. She did it just because that's what she did. I was doing it by choice. I wanted to do it. And I was also born Jewish. I had it there too. And so I can imagine a lot of that was happening in the first century as well. New people were coming in, much more committed and excited, not like you see today where they're just all excited about Messiah, not about Torah or the commandments. These were those who embraced all of it. And then they saw these friends of theirs and community, people living around, these Jewish people that were, talked a lot of talk and were really almost cocky about being born into all this stuff, but they weren't really doing it. I'm not saying all of them, but there were so many that weren't. So this is all part of the division that was going on there. So a lot of the good news message was, hey, we need to come together and be echad, be one. We need to stop judging each other. We need to stop attacking each other. See, a lot of that was going on here. Okay, a lot of that was going on here. So in Romans chapter 15, let's go back now to verse 1 and get the context. He says, but we who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. I wonder what that means, right? Let each one of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. Oh, for even the Messiah did not please himself, but as it has been written, the reproaches of those who reproached you fell upon me. So what is he saying? He's saying, look, if you are strong, then you need to bear with the failings of the weak. Weak how? Weak in character? This isn't talking about physical strength. Weak in character. Those that are struggling in their walk, in their belief, struggling in their emotions. He says, let each one of us please his neighbor for his good, to build him up. Instead of looking down and going, what's wrong with you? How come you can't do this? Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? Well, maybe they have failings. Maybe they have struggles. Maybe they've got issues that are holding them back. that you have no idea. Yet you judge. And we should not do that. He's saying, but let each one please his neighbor. What do you mean by please his neighbor? In other words, be patient, allow some space, and be there for your neighbor. Now, of course, this is talking about those in the body. For even the Messiah did not please himself. In other words, he wasn't looking for himself. See, all of you need to understand, when you start criticizing, judging, attacking, and all that means that whatever was going on just became about you. All right? And I don't want you to get this wrong. Listen very carefully. A tremendous amount of you are outwardly incredibly generous. You will give, you'll give to other people. I'm not just talking financially, like you're there for them and you'll provide for them. But some of you are the most selfish beings on the planet because somehow everything becomes about you. Somehow it's all about you. Even though you are very generous in general, so if I called you selfish, you would get real mad at me. But by selfish, I mean somehow it becomes about you. Oh, I can't believe that person's doing that. Who cares? Take the word I out of that. What do you mean I can't believe? What do you? So they're doing that. People do that stuff. Well, I can't believe it. They should know better. Now it all became about you. Don't let this become about you. He said, even Messiah could have said it was about him. He said, no. He instead said the reproaches of those who reproached you fell upon me. He said, no, I'll take those reproaches. I'll take those failings. I'll be compassionate. I'll have all the fruit of the Spirit with patience and long-suffering and all of that, right? The kindness and the meekness and the gentleness and all the good stuff in there. He says, for whatever was written before was written for our instruction, that through endurance and encouragement of the Scriptures, we might have expectation. So again, he says, these things that people might be using as weapons, he says they weren't meant to be weapons. The word was not meant to be a weapon. It was meant to be for instruction, for all of our instruction, and it was meant to be an encouragement as far as our expectation. Now, I want your expectation to be expanded a little bit. I want your expectation to go beyond you. You should be expecting everyone else to get there too. You should be expecting all of us to come into the fullness of the unity of the belief, etc. All right? You know what? Maybe I should read that to you from Ephesians 4, okay, just so that we're clear what we're talking about here, okay? Whoops, too many pages. All right, in Ephesians 4, he says that the fivefold ministry guys in verse 11 are there for the perfecting of us, the set-apart ones, which means we're imperfect without the guidance from those apostles, right? Shepherds, prophets, teachers, and evangelists. He says, and they're to do the service of building up the body until, this is the message of the forward-looking good news. This is what we should be looking forward to when it says that the Scriptures are supposed to be encouragement of the Scriptures so that we might have the expectation of what? That we can all come to the unity of belief. Could you imagine what it'd be like if we all believed the same? I've got people out there preaching that, oh, well, we don't have to all, agree and believe the same. I mean, that would be, it says right here that's what we're supposed to do. He says, the unity of the belief and of the knowledge of the Son of Elohim. So we should all agree, because people say, well, we just have to agree that Messiah is Messiah. Well, we can't agree what that looks like. We can't, it says we have to be in the unity of the belief and the knowledge of the Son of Elohim. So what we see and how we see him, we're supposed to be in unity about. They weren't when Paul was talking to them in Romans. They're not here as Paul's talking again in Ephesians. Isn't it amazing how he had to deal with the same problems at every one of his groups? And actually, that it's still a problem now? We still struggle with all these things? Isn't that kind of the problem? All right? He said, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the completeness of Messiah. So we're supposed to be as Messiah would be if he was in our shoes. We're supposed to do these things and treat each other like he would do. We're falling short. We're falling short all the time. And the reason is because without these fivefold, we're going to be children that are tossed about by every wind of teaching. He said, we should no longer be. But how do we no longer be? He says, well, these guys in verse 11 are there to help you not be tossed about. But of course, unless you believe that those are the guys you're supposed to be listening to, you're going to be tossed about by every wind of teaching. And I do turn on YouTube and look around, and there is every wind of teaching. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's a mess, and very little of it agrees with what this actually says. They don't even agree with each other, all right? Back to Romans. So he's saying that whatever was written before was written for our instruction, that through endurance and encouragement, the whole instruction message was reading all of the old stuff in here, is that if you would just be instructed and have endurance and be encouraged, we could all get there. We could all get there. That we might have the expectation. What's the expectation? Eternal life. That's the expectation. And the Elohim of endurance and encouragement give you, so now he's tying it into, that's what and who we worship. He is the Elohim of encouragement and endurance. May that Elohim give you to be of the same mind toward one another according to Messiah Yeshua. So he wants us to be of the same mind. We hardly agree on anything. Now, I think we agree, in m.t.o.i. we agree a lot, because in that agreement, you're allowing this part of the fivefold to lead, to fix the problems that were mentioned in Ephesians 4, 12, and 13. 13 says that we might get tossed about by every wind of teaching. This is the same here in 15 as what he said to the Philippians when he said, let this mind be in you. That was in Messiah Yeshua. That's Philippians 2:5. So Paul was saying this in various ways, the same message in each of his congregations. So are we going to have that encouragement? By the way, that encouragement is as part of the expectation. So the expectation of Scripture is that we would be of the same mind. Which mind? His mind, not yours. Nobody has to get on your calendar and on your understanding of the Godhead and your understanding of this and your understanding. His mind. We have to come into alignment with him. Verse 6, that with one mind and one mouth you might praise the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah. Oh, so Paul's telling us that the Elohim of the universe, the King of all things, wants us to have the same mind and speak with the same voice, one mouth, saying the same, in other words, saying the same thing, in praising the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah. That doesn't mean just say the same words. We should be saying the same message. What comes across should be the same, okay? So accept one another. There's a caveat here, as Messiah also did accept us. So wait a minute. He says, accept one another. Some of you are like, well, I'm just going to accept you if you agree with me this or if you agree with that. No, Messiah accepted all of you no matter what you were doing and where you were when he first accepted you. His expectation is that you will then grow into the same mind, his mind. So he says, look, Paul's expectation here is that we accept one another as Messiah also accepted us to the esteem of Elohim. And I say that Yeshua Messiah has become a servant of the circumcised for the truth of Elohim to confirm the promises made to the Father. So now he's getting back to the problem we've been dealing with in Romans and we'll continue to deal with. This battle between Jew and Gentile. Now he likes to use the phrase circumcised for those that were born in covenant. So they would have been circumcised on the 8th day. And those who were now coming in from the outside, who were not born in covenant. Look at how he words this. That Yeshua Messiah has become a servant of the circumcised for the truth of Elohim to confirm the promises made to the fathers. The fathers were promised, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the fathers were promised that there would be this remnant that would make it through, that there would be a light, that the lawgiver would come from between the feet of the Jewish community. All these things that pointed to Yeshua. So we should never disrespect that aspect. Now remember, he's talking about in the context of the believing body. The Jews coming into the believing body, because they're fighting in the body, okay? They're fighting outside too, but they were bringing that fight in. Whatever you were doing outside, leave it outside. Don't bring it in here, okay? It was for out there. It really wasn't even for out there, but you did it out there. Don't bring it in here, okay? Now he's going to give you the other side of it. And for the Gentiles to praise Elohim for his compassion, as it has been written, because of this I shall confess to you among the Gentiles, and I shall sing to your name. So he's trying to say the Father has a plan for both groups. And they are different in the motivator. In other words, he's doing for the Jewish side what he promised to do to the Jewish side. He's doing for the Gentile side what he actually said at some point he would do to bring them in. So that was also promises made about them. Remember, even Abraham was told to be a father of many Gentiles. The Hebrew there is goyim, the nations, right? He says, verse 10, and again it says, rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people. So are the Jews no longer his people? Yah forbid, it says. Let it not be. Of course they are. Are they doing everything he wants them to do? No, but they never did. Actually, you never do either. Not many people you can point to on the planet that always do what he wants and what he said. We're striving for that, aren't we? We better be. Or your expectation is placed in the wrong place. Well, look at what he's saying. That he said, this is for the Jews. He said, this is for the Gentiles. And they're supposed to come together, so the Gentiles are rejoicing with his people. And again, Isaiah says, Yeshayahu says, there shall be a root out of Yeshua, and he shall rise to reign over the Gentiles. On him the Gentiles shall set their expectation. So this is from Isaiah 11. Hold your place here. Let's go to Yeshayahu, Isaiah 11. And the verse there's two verses that say something similar. The one we're really going to concentrate on is verse 10. But let's start in verse 1. Because here it says, a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshua, and a sprout from his root shall bear fruit. Now that's what it also quoted in Romans, but then in verse 10, we're going to see it actually quotes it more specifically what's being said in Romans. He says, the Spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahweh. And shall make him breathe in the fear of Yahweh, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of his lips. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and a leopard lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child leads them. And the cow and bear shall feed, the young ones lie down together, and a lion eats straw like an ox. And the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the adder's den. They do no evil nor destroy in all my set-apart mountain, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of Yahweh as the waters cover the sea. We know what this is talking about, right? The return of Yeshua. We're talking about the end times played out and Yeshua returning. Listen to what it says here, though, in verse 10. And in that day there shall be a root out of Jesse, out of Yeshua, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the Gentiles shall seek, and his rest shall be honor and esteem in the eyes of the Gentiles. Now, of course, it continues, says, and it shall be that in that day Yahweh sets his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left. He names a couple of places that he's going to gather them from. Then he goes, he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Israel and assemble the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Paul is quoting that this is the stuff that's starting to happen with the death, burial, and resurrection of Messiah. This beginning of the Gentiles and the remnants and the scattered of Judah and the scattered of Israel coming together. Problem was, they were physically coming into the same space, but they weren't coming together. And a lot of you are physically in the same space, but you're not coming together. And there's only one way to come together. that you have to be under the same yoke, the same authority, the same instruction. You can't be coming together, all of you, as your own instructors. Okay, it's like too many chefs in the kitchen. It's not going to work. Somebody has to be the executive chef. And then everybody else falls in line to that, right? Okay? Let's go back to Romans. And so we were here in verse 12. It said again, Isaiah says, there shall be a root out of Jesse, or Yeshua, and he shall rise to reign over the Gentiles. On him the Gentiles shall set their expectation. It talks about having a rest of honor, to rest in honoring him in Isaiah. And the Elohim of expectation fill you, verse 13, with all joy and peace in believing, that you overflow with expectation by the power of the set-apart Spirit. He says, now I myself am persuaded concerning you, my brothers, that you are filled with goodness, complete in all knowledge, able also to admonish one another. Now remember, admonishment and correction only comes out of proper relationship, okay? So you don't just get to admonish anybody you want. He said, but I've written more boldly to you in part as reminding you, because of the favor given to me by Elohim, to be a servant of Yeshua Messiah to the Gentiles, with the priestly duty. So he has a priestly duty of bringing the good news of Elohim, so that the offering of the Gentiles becomes acceptable, set apart by the set-apart Spirit. Now, what priestly duty is he talking about? When you read about the good news, and we read about it in the Old Testament, how much of that is being spoken by Levitical priests? Not much. But the priesthood are the prophets, which are Melchizedekian priests. The priesthood are those that were not of the temple service. Okay? And look, I was just watching this last night just to find something. I was watching a teacher who did a whole thing on Levitical versus Melchizedek, but that specific teacher, and he's a very popular teacher, does not understand the difference. He thinks that we think one does the same as the other, so that somehow that one replaces the other. They are completely different in their roles. They never had the same job. Okay? So I understand where he's coming from, because if he thinks that Melchizedek is replacing Levi, and that Melchizedek somehow, the priesthood could do whatever Levi did, that has never been the case. Before there was even a Levi, the Melchizedekian priesthood never did the things the Levitical priesthood would do when they came around. Completely different. A big part of the Melchizedekian priesthood was the good news, the teaching and training of the expectation, or how to be meeting his expectation, okay? Levitical priesthood did really two things. One, temple service. Two, judicial, right, rulings according to Torah, okay? So they were part of the judgment system, the judging system. None of the Melchizedekian priests were judges. That wasn't ever their role. And they never did temple service. It was never their role. And when Hebrews is talking about we now have a high priest of the order of Melchizedek, if we claim to be of that order, I'm sorry to that other teacher, we're not claiming to do something that was Levitical. So when he says in this verse that he says, I am doing a priestly duty of bringing the good news of Elohim, so that the offerings of the Gentiles, now the Gentiles weren't going to be doing offerings in the temple. The Gentiles were not, the temple wasn't going to exist much longer after Paul was talking about this, okay? That they would be set apart. They would be acceptable. In other words, he taught them that in order to be acceptable, you need to be what? Covenanted. It's only covenanted offerings that are acceptable, because they're offerings made out of a proper relationship, which means you need to listen to the Are You Covenant teaching until you figure this out, because that is the relationship he desires. Okay, he desires. All right? Now, Listen now, verse 17. He says, therefore I have cause for boasting in Messiah Yeshua in the matters pertaining to Elohim. So when he says boasting, in other words, I am confident that I'm doing what he called me to do. I don't feel like I'm just running out there on a limb, just claiming whatever I'm claiming. He said, for I shall not presume to speak of any matter except that, what Messiah has worked out through me, in word and deed, to make the Gentiles obedient. To what? If it's not Torah, what is he making them obedient to? Well, he just said to make their offerings acceptable. And when you're not obedient, your offerings are not acceptable. That's Torah. That's clearly in the Tanakh. So he's saying his calling is to help the Gentiles who come into belief, who come and get grafted in. Remember, we read that in chapter 11. This is chapter 15. He already talked about the grafting in process. All right? That relationship. And he says here, I have no problem boasting. Boasting means claiming. Okay, we're not going to say boasting like he's bragging. I have no problem. Okay, therefore, I have cause to claim in Messiah Yeshua, in the matter pertaining to Elohim, I am not presuming to speak anything except what Messiah has worked out through me in word and deed to make the Gentiles obedient, in power and in signs and wonders, in the power of the Spirit of Elohim, so that from Jerusalem and round about to Eleucrion, whatever, I have completed the preaching of the good news of Messiah. And the good news, as we're learning, has a whole lot more to it than just saying, hey, there's a Messiah that's been here, and he's sitting at the right hand right now, and you can have a relationship with him. Okay? And so I was ambitious to bring the good news where Messiah had not been named, lest I should build on another man's foundation. He says, I was ambitious to bring the good news to where Messiah had not been named. In other words, I'm bringing it to people that were not already named as Messiahs. The Israelites, the Jews. Lest I should build on another man's foundation, on something else. But as it is written, to whom it was not announced concerning him, they shall see, and those that have not heard shall understand. Oh, okay. This is why I was often hindered from coming to you. He said, so people did not want me doing this. People did not want me doing this. You know, it's really funny. I don't know if it's funny, but there's so many commercials since COVID, of Christian ministries just reaching out and saying, you know, whatever's going on in your life, you know, there's a Messiah who's there to fix everything for you. Well, you know what? If he loved you that much, why isn't he just fixing it for you? Because he has to call you. You can't just call him. He's allowing this world to be this way until he calls you. They're all saying it from the wrong direction. Oh, you just have to go out and just, you know, claim him as your Messiah, and then everything's just going to work out. That's not the way it says it in here. None comes unless the Father draws. Messiah said that. None comes. It has to be a drawing. It's not none comes unless some preacher makes an ad on TV. All right? Or on YouTube and you watch it. Because the way they preach this kind of makes Messiah look awful. Because they're saying Messiah could just fix everything, but he's just going to let you suffer until you actually decide to come and seek him. No, Messiah is waiting to only deal with those that are being called at this moment and allowing the rest of this to be proof of what happens when we try to do things our own way. He's allowing us to prove to ourselves what it looks like when we decide how everything should be. I don't understand what the nonsense that they're doing. Okay, it doesn't make sense to me. All right, let's continue in chapter 16, and that will finish Romans here. And we'll begin in 1 Corinthians. All right, so Romans, chapter 16, verse 17. He says, now I call upon you, brothers, watch out for those who cause divisions and stumbling. Now let's understand what he's saying is causing division and stumbling. Contrary to the teaching which you learned, and turn away from them. Stay away from those teaching different than what Paul said. He said, I taught you. Stay away from everybody teaching you differently. So people get mad at me when I say things like that, saying, oh, the ego and the pride of that guy. Oh, but Paul's in the Bible, so he can say that. No, any Ephesians 4:11 person should say that. I'm giving you the download, the understanding, the insight, the interpretation. Stay away from those causing division, trying to give you a different understanding. I have no problem saying that from the microphone. I also have no problem with you doing whatever you do. You want to go listen to anybody you want? Have fun. You're free to do it, okay? But he says here, I call upon you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause division and stumbling, contrary to the teaching which you learned, and turn away from them. For such ones do not serve our Master Yeshua Messiah, but their own stomach. And by smooth words and flattering speech, they deceive the hearts of the innocent. Like all those very Christian-sounding Sabbath-keeping groups that say the things that make everybody feel good. And there's plenty of that happening right now. I'm pretty sure there's one pretty large group that not only does that, but they're not doing anything today because after all, we just finished the code and we don't have time to do something else and set up and everything else. How do you miss Shabbat? We kept this tent up knowing we needed to do all the way to Shabbat. They should have stayed wherever they were until Shabbat. We are obligated. Well, let me divide between you and me. The ministry is obligated to provide for you the place to go so that you who are obligated have that place to go. Okay? I question ministries that shut down and take a Saturday off. I don't understand that. Okay? I haven't missed one Saturday. None of you can even remember the last time I missed a Saturday except when I was almost dying. Okay? Maybe I've missed a Saturday when I've been other places speaking, but we never left you without something. I had Elder teach, I had Rabbi Tom teach, right? You had that place. We are obligated to provide that place. Okay? And then you're obligated to show up, whether it's online or here. But we are to provide you with that. But there's a bunch of people out there saying whatever. And by smooth words and flattering speech, in other words, it's saying the things that make you feel good. Okay? Now, I know a lot of you do feel good sometimes from the things I say, but that is never my intention. My intention is just to say it. Some of it will make you feel good, some of it won't. In other words, I'm not intending to try to make you feel good. I know some of it will. I know some of us. I'm not saying I never want you to feel good. Some of you are laughing. I'm just saying what he wants me to say. And you're supposed to feel whatever that is, okay? Sometimes he's correcting you. Well, that's not supposed to feel good. Sometimes he's encouraging you. That should feel good. But I'm not saying it with any agenda to try to worry about that. There's a lot of things that a lot of ministries will not cover, will not say, will not teach, because it won't be popular. That's what he's talking about here. Don't be drawn away. You know what? I watched somebody's service the other day, and I saw some of the people from here there. And I'm like, they're just seeking that softer, smoother message. Because that place gives a much softer, smoother message. And it's not, scripture accurate. It's not Torah accurate. And so what do you know? I just looked there going, why? You should be here. And of course, some of you look at me like, oh, again, with the ego and the arrogance. No. If I believe I'm right, and I believe this is my role, why would I think you should be anywhere but here? If I believe he's giving me words, why would I want you to be anywhere but here? I don't get anything out of this. You think I do. Well, we put money in the box, so what? I go make more money doing something else. I really could. You might wonder, whatever. I certainly absolutely could. So I don't need this. I have no choice. Because I understand what he has me doing. Especially when I go out there and look what everybody else is doing. And you guys should value that. I know you do. At least most of you. Okay? Paul's trying to make the same case. He's literally making the same argument that I'm making. Or I'm making the same one he made. He's like, guys, why don't you just listen to what I'm telling you? Why are you listening to all these people? Why are you being all drawn away to softer things? He says, for such ones do not serve, verse 18, Master Yeshua, but their own stomach. In other words, they're just serving their own to feed themselves. And by smooth words and flattering speech, they deceive the hearts of the innocent. Your obedience indeed is reported to all. Therefore, I rejoice concerning you, but I wish you to be wise indeed as to the good and simple toward the evil. I want you to be wise indeed, because there's going to always be a choice. There's always going to be a different place you could go. There's going to be a different voice, a different twisting of the message, or we'll call it presentation of the message in a way that you may like better, might appeal to you in some way. But he says, I wish you to be wise indeed as to the good. That's the Torah, that's the stuff of Abba, the stuff of the Father, and simple toward the evil. And the Elohim of peace shall crush Hasatan under your feet shortly. The favor of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with you. Amen. The favor meaning the merit that you have of his favor for being, as he said in the beginning of verse 19, your obedience, for being obedient. Now drop down to verse 25, because the rest of this is just a lot of mentioning of people that were there helping and doing things. They sending greetings. And in verse 25, he says, and to him who is able to establish you according to my good news and the preaching of Yeshua Messiah, according to the revelation of the secret which was kept silent since times of old, but now has been made manifest, and by the prophetic scriptures has been made known to all nations, according to the command of the everlasting Elohim for belief obedience. I'm sorry, we should go back to 24. It says, the favor of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with you all. Amen. He says, and to him who is able to establish you according to good news. He says, according to my good news. He says, I'm a speaker of good news. It's from the above. It's positive, forward-looking. He says, and to him who is able to establish you according to my good news and the preaching of Yeshua. Because we're going to read in 1 Corinthians, in other places, he says, I just here to preach Yeshua and Yeshua only. Okay? He says, I'm just here to preach that. He says, according to the revelation of the secret which was kept silent since times of old. The secret what? The secret about Jew, Gentile, everybody coming into unity of Messiah. That message was not there. Why? Because he started with a set-apart nation. And the set-apart nation dropped the ball consistently. So the set-apart nation didn't end up doing what would have eventually led to the rest of the world coming and saying, we want what you got. Why are you guys so blessed? They were supposed to be that light that drew everyone to the Creator. So there's a secret about how that was to happen. It was said through the other levels of understanding. It wasn't that simple Peshat level. It was hinted at. It was spoken of allegorically. It was hidden, the Sod level, right? He says, but now he's being revealing these things. He says, but now this stuff has been made manifest by the prophetic scriptures, which have been made known to the nations. So they know the scriptures, but now we need these Ephesians 4:11 sent out ones to connect those dots, to reveal how that connects. I mean, most of you started off in a church and had no idea how anything from Matthew to Revelation connected with anything to the left. Very little was ever taught to connect those dots. And of course, then you read Paul all the time, but you don't know how much Paul quoted from the Tanakh. And so you don't understand anything Paul's saying, really, without knowing where it's coming from. How do you know what Paul's talking about? You can't. You cannot know what Paul's talking about unless you understand Genesis all the way up to Matthew. Actually, you got to understand what Yeshua said in the Gospels, too, to understand what Paul's talking about. But you were taught the Gospels over and over again in church, but they didn't understand because he was quoting the Tanakh too and fulfilling things that the Tanakh said. And so you weren't taught, even though you were taught the Gospels every week, whatever they were preaching, you don't know because they didn't know. So Paul's saying this has been kind of a secret. It's been silent. It's been kept silent, meaning people didn't teach it because they didn't know. So then he says, has been made known to all the nations according to the command of everlasting Elohim for belief obedience. This is all being revealed for belief obedience to the Jew, who wasn't really doing the obedience, and to the Gentile, who had no idea about what the obedience was. They didn't even know what to believe in. The Jew had the head start, to the Jew first, but a lot of them weren't obeying, but they weren't obeying, even if they were obeying, they weren't obeying in a belief obedience. They were just obeying in a mechanical obedience, okay? And that's different, all right? That's very different. He says, to Elohim, the last verse here, 27, to Elohim, wise alone be the esteem through Yeshua Messiah forever. By wise alone, and we're going to read about this in Corinthians, the idea of dealing with people and their wisdom being made foolish. He is wise alone. We can only be wise as we become changed in our thinking and our mind to his mind, because the wisdom comes from above. Amen? Amen. All right, we got 28 minutes. We can go to 1 Corinthians. All right, we're going to start here in chapter 1. And quite frankly, we're going to probably read all of the first couple of chapters. So some of you maybe are excited about that. We're going to deal with 1 Corinthians a little bit. Now, in verse, let's see, where's the verse? 17. We're going to go to verse 1 and explain all this. But in verse 17 it says, for Messiah did not send me to immerse. He said, he didn't send me to immerse. He said, but to bring the good news. And we all know a lot more now what that means. Not with wisdom of words, okay, that the stake of Messiah should be nullified. What is that word? What in the world is he talking about there? Let's go back to verse 1, and then we'll get to verse 17 and finish the chapter. And you're going to need all of that to understand chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4. Because context is everything. Did you get that last time when we were dealing with the things in Romans, that the context fixed a whole lot of stuff that you've never understood because nobody ever taught you the context? I'm not bragging about anything. That's my job. He said to me, your job is to teach them context. Show them why the person said what they said or why he said what he said, so you understand where it's coming from and why it's there and what you're supposed to get out of it. Verse 1, Shaul, a called emissary of Yeshua Messiah by the desire of Elohim, and brother Sosthenes. Now, bear in mind, he understood and had no problem saying, I'm a called emissary. What's an emissary? An apostle. So he's saying, I'm one of those fivefold guys. Now, this is not Ephesus, this is Corinth, but he's saying, look, I'm a called out, anointed from above emissary. He says, to the assembly of Elohim, which is in Corinth, to those who are set apart in Messiah Yeshua, called set apart ones, called, not bothered on the line in the store, not preached at, on some TV ad, but called. Every one of you, I call it bubble popping, right? Every one of you, he personally popped your bubble, touched you, whatever wording you like, called you. All right? He has to do the calling. Yeshua said none comes unless he calls or draws. He says, to the called, set apart ones, with all those calling on the authority of Yeshua Messiah, our master, in every place, theirs and ours. So this letter, so we know up front, is not to the world, not to the Gentiles who are not believing. This is to those that have been called, that are set apart in Messiah Yeshua, who are calling on the authority of Yeshua, okay? So we know who the audience is. Part 1 of context is who's speaking. Shaul, the emissary, he says, that's who's speaking. To who? The set apart ones in Corinth. The called ones in Corinth. He says, unmerited favor to you and peace. He doesn't say sounds dumb. He says, favor to you. May you have merited favor. He says, favor to you and peace from Elohim. If you think grace there means, unmerited favor, why would he wish that on anybody? He's wishing, as a Jew would, may you merit his favor. Favor to you from above. Favor that you've merited. Favor to you and peace from Elohim our Father and the Master Yeshua Messiah. I thank my Elohim always concerning you for the favor of Elohim which was given to you by Messiah Yeshua. That in him you were enriched in every word and all knowledge, as the witness of Messiah was confirmed in you. So he says that favor of Elohim which was given to you, okay, he blessed you with this this gifting of calling you. And you're thinking, well, how did you merit that? Because he knew that when he called you, you could get there from here, from that moment. So you don't know that you merited it, but you merited that. This is not about salvation. This is about the timing of the calling to you to the knowledge of your Elohim. Do you understand the difference? That's not salvation. That's the beginning of the journey into reward. Salvation was already handled by Messiah before even the building and the foundation of the earth. Okay? He said that he died and provided that before even the foundation. He was slain even before. That provided the potential deliverance from the second death. It's accounted for man to die once, and then there's a second death. The second death is the one you don't get to come back from. But he provided so that you can come back from the first one and live forever. Now, as to you, by favor, knowing you could do this, so you have merited this. I don't think I've ever taught it this way before. Pay attention. He knew you could get there. I didn't say that you would. I said that you could. You have everything you need, or he wouldn't have popped your bubble when he did, to get where you need to go from where he started you, okay? You may not believe that, but you gotta believe that. That's what he's saying here. He says, but understand that favor to you, he says, I thank you. I said, I thank my Elohim for the favor of Elohim which was given to you by Messiah. Okay, none comes to the Father except through Messiah. None comes to Messiah except being drawn by the Father. That's in the Father and Son teaching. Do you know the Father and Son? All right? So this was then the favor, okay, of Elohim, which was given to you by Messiah. So Messiah then exposes you to and shows you the Father. So this is favor from the point of view that you still merited it. He knew that you had it in you to do this, okay? Now he says that in him you were enriched in all, Messiah. So the Father drew, and the Messiah then enriches you in all. As the witness of Messiah was confirmed in you, so that you are not lacking in any gift, eagerly waiting for the revelation of our Master Yeshua Messiah. Okay, so he provided you with everything you needed so that you would not be lacking in any gift. Now let's not turn that into churchianity and think it's like some whatever gift. I've got the gift of knowledge. I've got the gift of this. No, he's saying everything that for the above has for you that you needed, he provided you with. And he gave it to you as a gift. He popped your bubble and opened you up to these things. And then you came to understand Sabbath, feast, kasha, whatever it was, whatever grabbed you first. Pagan days versus his days, whatever it was. That was a gift that he opened you up to see. And then he continues to give you more gifts, like teachings from here, to gift you with understanding, so that you can then be eagerly waiting for the revelation of our Master Yeshua, who shall also confirm you to the end, unreprovable in the day of our Master Yeshua Messiah. He shall also confirm what in the end? It says he shall also confirm you to the end. Well, if you make it to the end, he's going to confirm that, yes, you are his. Now remember, there are those that are not going to get confirmed to the end. They're going to say, Lord, Lord, and he's going to say, nope. They thought they knew him. I mean, they didn't go up to a false Messiah and say, Lord, Lord. They went up to Yeshua. They said, you can come out and say, Lord, Lord. He's going to go, no, because you were not keeping the Torah. You were not doing belief obedience. That's a problem. So continuing. He says, verse 10, and I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of our Master, by the authority of our Master Yeshua Messiah, that you all agree. Oh, same thing was going on in Romans. And that there be no divisions among you, but that you be knit together in the same mind and in the same, opinion. Oh no, I'm listening to all these other teachers out there saying, we can have all the opinions as long as we agree on the big things like that Messiah is the Messiah. Or that we believe that we should be keeping the Torah, but we won't even agree on what that looks like. pick any Torah command and we won't agree on how to keep it. Opinion? So you guys are not really reading this, are you? Shaul wants us to be, he says, I appeal to you, brothers, by the authority of Messiah, that you all agree, and that there be no divisions. Divisions are now what, you say divisions, or what do you mean divisions? Like separate congregations? He says, no, I'm talking about everything. He says, you should not be divided by what? Your mindset of Messiah and your opinions. Don't be dividing over your opinions. By the way, we get emails every day by people sharing their opinions about me and what I teach and what they think about what I say, what he says through me, whatever. And by the way, we have a very special place we file that. It's kind of circular, and it sits on the floor, or it's in an email, we just hit delete. We don't entertain that nonsense. So just for all of you out there, if you want to set me straight, why don't you call and we'll have a conversation. But if you're going to email me a long book, I'm not reading it. And you'll think, oh, you just don't want to be. I'm the teacher. You're not the teacher. If you are, then fine, we'll talk teacher to teacher. But have respect. I know what I am. You think you know what you are, that's fine too. But I'm the teacher. And you're not going to teach me. Now you're going to think, oh man, that sounds all cocky as hell. I don't care what it sounds like. I know my job, my role, and what I do. And so it's not your job to straighten me out. As a matter of fact, I don't see a single person's role anywhere in here that says, and go straighten out the teachers. He warns you about the bad teachers, the ones who are going to lead you into all kinds of problems. He doesn't say anything except to avoid them. He doesn't say, go straighten them out. Show me the verse where it's somebody's job to straighten out the teachers. Oh, I'm a prophet. You're a prophet? Well, then you should be looking for a king to talk to. Or you're talking to the body as a whole. You're not a prophet to a teacher. There are no prophets to teachers. I don't see that anywhere in Scripture. The prophets talk to all the people or talk to the king. That's who they were sent to deal with. So don't say that you're a prophet and you're supposed to go straighten out all these ministries. That's not scriptural. I don't see that anywhere. If anybody sees a verse that backs that up, please show me, because it's not here. All right? It's just not in here. Now listen to what he says. He says, I appeal. I'm pleading with you. Brothers, that by the authority of Master Yeshua, that you would knock off this dividing thing about your ridiculously important opinion. You think your opinion is everything. Paul says, I don't give a whatever about your opinion. I give all my energy towards you becoming Messiah's mind. No divisions. That's why the Ephesians 4:11, he didn't say it here to the Corinthians, but that's why it's there. He says, look, there is a structure to solve all these problems so you're not tossed about by every division, all opinion thing. And that's if you could find an anointed, appointed, and believe that they are anointed, appointed. And then let that person settle the opinion arguing. So there's no more arguing. And even among leadership, there was hierarchy. Because when they were arguing in Acts, remember in Acts 15, they were arguing over circumcision, and James stood up and said, okay, I heard all the arguing and all your opinions. He said, thank you very much, but this is what we're going to do. All right? I mean, there's a place for sharing opinions in a right structure. We have leadership meetings once a month. By leadership, I mean the congregational leadership around the world in m.t.o.i. We're having one tomorrow, okay? Now, that being said, there's an opportunity for those leaders to share their opinions. And I want them. But they also understand that I will make a decision and then the arguments will be done. Whatever that is. Now, of course, part of my job is to bring consensus to help them understand why that decision is the decision. It's not just, well, it's my job, you just do whatever I say. It's never that way. An effort then is made by me to help win over everyone as to why the choice was made, why that's the right choice in this situation at this time. okay? Just so you know, it's never like, well, because I said so, too bad. All right, that doesn't happen. You can ask any of the shamishes, you can ask Elder, anybody, Rabbi Tom, anybody in the meetings. That's never the case. I do take in everybody's input. So there is a place for opinions. He said, but don't be divided by your opinions. How are you divided by opinions? Because now there's no authority structure to stop the noise, okay? There's no authority structure to stop the noise. Years ago, there was a teacher, still around actually, who believed the book of Hebrews did not belong in the Bible. And so somebody who was listening to that teacher came to me, man, this is a good 23, 24 years ago, came to me and said, you need to make him stop. I was like, how am I supposed to do that? He's not under me. He's got his own ministry. He's not going to listen to anything I say. Only proper structure can stop the noise inside that structure. Do you understand? Only proper structure can stop the noise in the structure. Problem is, most people are not under any structure. And so there's no way to stop the noise. Do you understand? I've said this many times. I went across Canada, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago, and went from one side, well, not quite the whole thing, but let's say I went from Manitoba all the way to the Yukon, okay? And every congregation I talked to in those places, I talked to people in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, in BC, okay, all the way into the Yukon. And we had a conversation about what's wrong in the body, the divisions, what's causing all the problems. And they all said, well, we divide over this, and we fight over that, and we divide. And then I always ask the question, why? Why does this happen in the body? Because there's no structure to stop it, okay? Because structure cannot stop anything unless you voluntarily are submitted to the structure. Yeshua has no authority in your life unless you submit to it. The Creator has no authority in your life unless you submit to it. It's your choice. I have no authority unless you submit to it. Look at a parent, like a father, husband, wife. The wife, right? She's not under any authority unless she submits to him. The children aren't under any authority unless they submit to the parents. There is no authority without submission. Now, there's a certain level that I guess authority can force themselves on people. That never really goes well very long term. I mean, you try that, of course, with your little ones, but then they grow older and start having opinions and all kinds of other things, and they don't listen. And then you get frustrated because you can't make them do. Shouldn't have been making them do anyway, except when it had to do with keeping them safe, like making them not touch hot things and that kind of stuff, right? Or walking just by themselves to a parking lot when they're 5. Okay, things that you made them not do. But when they start choosing directions in their lives and things that they want to do and believe in everything, and you want to control that, you can't. You can't. You know, the Creator does not want to control anything. He wants you to trust Him and submit. The Messiah doesn't want to control anything. He wants you to trust Him and submit. I don't want to control anything, but if you trust me and submit, I can help you. That's kind of what the Father and the Son want. I can help you if you just trust me and submit. That's what they say. That's what this is all about. But you got to trust me and submit. He's saying, look, I plead with you. And he says what the answer is. He says, I plead with you that there be no divisions, but that you be knit together in the same mind and in the same opinion. He says, for I have been informed concerning you, my brothers, by those of the house of Chloe, that there are strifes among you. And it's not like just people fighting with each other. It's about the mind and the opinions that have to do with the walk, okay? And what I mean is this, that each one is saying things like, well, I'm of Paul, and I'm of Apollos, and I'm of Kepha, and I'm of Messiah, and I'm of whatever. In other words, they've turned this thing into a multiple choice, pick who you want, as opposed to we're all part of the same thing. They're not understanding this is one thing. Father, Son, leadership, it's all vertical. Now there is some under the leadership, right? There are multiple apostles that were put under Messiah. Messiah had 12 apostles, that he trained, but they were all under Messiah. But even with the 12, they were all under James. And we see that play out. Now, of course, leadership and vertical structure is always under attack by Hasatan through a lot of people. You guys love to go to, I'll call it right out. 119, has got a teaching on, church, God's way, or some other thing like that. And they're adamant against any kind of vertical structure. They believe Paul never had vertical structure in any of his congregations. It was a multitude of elders. Then why is this, by the way, this letter in 1 Corinthians, was Paul in Corinth at the time? No. So they wrote him a letter. Why? Because he was in charge. Deuteronomy 17, a matter came up that was too hard for that local leadership to handle, so they went up to the next level because it's vertical structure. That's what Paul's teaching. That was Moses. Moses set up vertical structure right there. The first time there was a nation, he set up vertical structure. But see, we don't want that because we have to trust and submit. And we don't want to trust and submit. That's why your families are jacked up, your marriages are jacked up, everything's jacked up because you will not submit under authority. And by the way, you're free to find the authorities that you want to submit to. Women, don't marry a guy you're not willing to submit to and not ready to trust him enough to submit to him. Don't marry him just because you think he's cute. You are expected to have someone you can believe in and trust to follow and submit to. All right? And then you should be able to make sure that follows through then when you have your children, that everything stays under the authority of that man. Okay, men, your whole thing is jacked up because a lot of you are not trustworthy and haven't the slightest idea how to lead. But you want to demand that submission though, because you'll come for counseling going, she won't submit. And I'm like, to what? What does she not submit to? And then I hear the noise and the nonsense. Your anal control nonsense that you want to have, or because you actually have a leading situation and you actually need something to be submitted to? I've already made this claim, and my wife is free to deny it or change it. You go ask her how many times I demand any kind of submission. Almost never, all right? It's very rare that I say, this is important, we need to not do this or we need to do this. That's where the submission would come in, right? Almost never. I don't try to be, but some of you guys think you need to control everything, all right? I don't do that. You can ask her. When I talk about the 100 yeses for the one no, that's a reality. You ask her. I don't just preach and say, and then I'm not doing. But some of you people think you need to control everything. And you do that with your children as they're getting to be teenagers. That's only going to blow up in your face. You can't control. It does not work. Okay? Everybody's going to suffer from that. Some of you really need to hear this. You've got adult children in your house. And I don't want to hear, well, they're not 20 yet. In this world, 18 is adult. You got an 18-year-old in your house, you better start showing them enough respect to the fact that they're adults, which means that let them make their mistakes, let them make their choices, let them counsel with me. Some of you out there like, your children aren't allowed to talk to me because you want to control it. You want to know what's going on. They're adults. All you 18-year-olds, you can talk to me. 18 plus. You do not need their permission. They're going to be all mad at me. You're an adult. Well, they're going to be all kinds of grief. Then move out. You're an adult. Stop trying to control. I don't try to control either of my children. Okay, ask my wife. She'll tell you, I do not try to control either one of my children. They turned 18. I'm like, it's their choice. Sometimes she'd be like a little upset with some of the things they were doing. I'd be like, that's their choice. They're adults. All right? Harder for mom sometime. Okay? To let go that sort of control thing. I keep saying, but they're an adult. All right? What can you do? But see, Paul's having this problem talking to them saying, you guys are supposed to be adults. And you're supposed to be in this structure. And even as adults, you have to have the ones you submit to. Listen to what he's saying here. He says, some of you say, well, I'm of Shaul, I'm of Apollos, I'm of Kepha, I'm of Messiah. He says, has the Messiah been divided? Well, I'm of this congregation, I'm of that congregation, I'm of this congregation. We really shouldn't be all like that mess. By the way, in m.t.o.i, we have this structure. All of the extension congregations are fully submitted to this structure, okay? You can clap for that, that's fine. 2 people clapped, they figured whatever. So, not perfectly, but with almost without exception, nothing happens in Urbana or Odessa or the Philippines or New Zealand or whatever, all over South Africa, all the congregations, Houston, whatever I'm leaving out, that has not been approved by and run by what's going on here at the headquarters, okay? And if something does go on that we're not in line with, we will go and fix it, and they fix it. Because they understand the structure. That structure, by the way, is the number one thing that provides safety. Do you understand? When the house structure is right, the people in the house are safe. You understand? But you're all clapping, but do you understand that means that you must take responsibility for your place in that structure? Especially you men. Because it's your job to keep everybody safe. Now, some of you are going to go home and start getting in your wife's face. See, Rabbi said you need to listen to me. I did not say that. I said you need to lead. And you need to put your foot down only when absolutely necessary. Don't try to control everything. I don't even control the remote. Some of you men are going to be real upset with that. I don't. You can ask my wife. She walks in the room, I go, here, you can watch what you want. Now, occasionally, I'm watching something. I say, just let this finish, and then you can watch. Because maybe something's happening in the news, because that's all I ever watch is the news, or I'm trying to watch to see what other teachers are doing. I'll let that finish, and then she can have it. And then I'll just watch something on my computer, my phone, or whatever. I mean, I'll just do something else. I don't need to be about me on any of that stuff. I'm there to provide for her. So, and she's like, sometimes she'll say to me, no, it's okay, you watch what you want. I said, good, okay, I appreciate that. But I don't control anything that doesn't need to be controlled. And that's very few things, okay? When we were broke, we've been broke. I had a lot of control over saying, you can't buy that, you can't do this, not now, we have to wait, whatever, okay? So when something is necessary, control needed to be imposed. But it's rare that it's necessary, guys. If you lead, they'll follow. You don't need to demand, come here, do this, whatever. You don't need to do that. You just don't. You think you do. That's a weakness, okay? Your strong man shall follow. Because she'll know where you're going, she'll believe in where you're going, and trust you. All leadership only works with trust. That's why everything in here is about trust obedience. All leadership, in other words, even us with the Father, only works if we trust him. That's why I have a teaching called what? Do you trust him enough to obey him? Right? But you have to trust him. And that then leads to Messiah. Messiah has no value to you if you don't trust him. Then it leads to even like Torah commands. They have no value unless you trust that they do what they're supposed to do, which is to, keep you safe and bless you and change you from what you are into him. Ladies, none of this stuff's gonna work marriage-wise, guys, unless you are trustworthy and she can trust you. I don't mean just trust that you're not gonna cheat. I mean trust that you will have everything to provide, protect, etc. Everything's about trust. Your children will flourish when they know they can trust you. They won't bring things to you if they can't trust you. I see the struggle with parents all the time. Parents, the children don't talk to them. We had a problem years ago with some cutting. Some of the teenagers were cutting themselves. And I went to the parent because the child told me what was happening. I was pretty impressed that the child felt comfortable enough to talk to me. And I went up to the parents and I said to the parents, I said, look, first of all, I said to the parent, your daughter's cutting herself. He said, no, she's not your daughter. I said, she told me. She came to me, okay? Showed me the cuts, the scars. Don't tell me what I don't know. Because he was in denial. I said, what you need to figure out, don't go get mad at her, don't go scold her. I said, what you need to figure out is why she didn't feel enough trust to talk to you. Your children aren't going to talk to you when they're teenagers, 13 even, but certainly 16, 17, 18. They're not going to talk to you about anything going on if they can't trust that it's safe to talk to you. But you have to earn that. You have to show them that it's safe to talk to you. I very confidently will tell you, both my children talk to me about pretty much everything. Now, of course, every parent thinks that. You can ask my children. I've earned that trust, okay? Earn the trust. He earns your trust. He does everything to show you that he's trustworthy. So does Messiah. By the way, so does Torah obedience. It's trustworthy that when you do it, it works, okay? We have to, as a vertical structure, earn trust. And then all of you in the structure need to not be doing these things, not be causing division, not be just running rampant all over the place with your opinions, okay? Nobody cares about your opinions. I don't care about, not only don't I care about, you should not care about my opinions. I'm sharing what the word says. I'm giving you what I believe is the inspired message for you to be delivered. But it's not about opinions. Okay, everybody's got an opinion. Okay? I've heard the old thing, opinions are like rear ends. Everybody has one and they all smell or stink. I'm just saying, of course that wasn't the language that was used when I heard it, but you can have opinions, but share them gently, share them as maybe a discussion of just, exploring things. But if you're sharing an opinion because you're trying to win people over to your opinion, you're gonna cause problems and division. Okay? If you have a new idea that you don't know what my position is on it, come ask me before you start sharing it all over the place. That's a safer way to go, all right? So he says, has the Messiah been divided? Verse 13, was Shaul impaled for you? Or were you immersed in the name of Shaul? He says, I thank Elohim that I immersed none of you, except for these two people, Crispus and Gaius, that no one should say I immersed into my own name. This is why I'm very clear when we do our mikvah. I said, this has nothing to do with m.t.o.i or me. I'm just here presiding over this thing you're doing between you and the Father, okay? Because it's not about, the Adventists baptize you into their church. A lot of churches baptize you into their church. I don't know where they ever got that from. That's not scriptural. This is a relationship with you vertically. It has nothing to do with the group, all right? He says, now I did also immerse the household of Stephanas. For the rest, I do not know whether I immersed anyone else. Okay, now listen, he says, for the Messiah did not send me to immerse, but to bring the good news, not with wisdom of words, that the stake of Messiah should not be nullified. For the word of the stake is indeed foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of Elohim. It's the power of Elohim. For us who are in the process of the deliverance. But otherwise, it's foolishness because you're busy missing the whole point. In other words, Messiah and the stake are of no value to you if you don't understand the whole point of it. But you need a teacher to explain it to you, all right? You need a teacher to explain it to you. So I think we're going to stop there. We got the rest of the chapter and to continue because it's going to get into the whole thing about wisdom that I want to kind of cover. And then we're going to cover some of those verses also in Isaiah and other places where they're quoted from. So we're going to end right here. So let's go before the Father. Father, we come before you, and Father, we so appreciate the word that you've given us. I appreciate the words of explanation and insight that you give me to share, and that, Father, that we could all be edified and lifted up and encouraged by your words and the understanding of your words. So that, Father, that we can learn to be trusting and obedient and submitted to them. So, Father, we thank you now for this Shabbat. We thank you for this teaching. We thank you for all that you're doing, for helping us to understand the fullness of the good news. And we submit ourselves to you in the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.